Joining me now, Representative for Florida's 17th Congressional District, Congressman Greg Steube. Mr. Congressman, thankfully this passed by such a big margin, but still, the radical anti-Israel rhetoric that's been going on in our country from the Democrats, whether it's Bernie Sanders, this is something that's growing. This BDS movement, it's not going anywhere.
Well, and you hear Tlaib on the floor talking about money going to Israel, which, for the record, is for the Iron Dome system, which is for missile defense. It's not used to launch missiles into Palestine. It's used to defend themselves against the missiles that are launched from Hamas, from the Palestinian territory into Israel. But take that all aside and the facts aside, where are her cries for their human rights abuses by the Taliban? Where are her cries for the $90 billion worth of military equipment that was left in the hands of a designated terrorist organization, the Taliban, and the human rights abuses that they're going to put on women all over Afghanistan? You don't hear her talking about that. It's always political. And it's just interesting that AOC goes to the exact place where she knows the camera's going to pick up her, as you described them, crocodile tears after she votes present. So she doesn't even have the courage to vote no and take a position on a bill, which I don't believe you shouldn't be allowed to vote present. You should be able to vote no or yes, that's it. So she doesn't even have the courage to vote no, and then she's going to cry about it on the floor so that everybody gets to see her in distress.
And the Democrats, what they're trying to do, they may try to act like they stand with Israel with this, but Biden this week saying he's for a two-state solution. This is something that's not going anywhere. The Palestinians are saying they're giving Israel 1 year to get out and stop occupying the territory. What's the U.S. going to do? Stand down?
Well, Joe Biden will stand down because he doesn't support our largest partner. And the reason why we had that vote just on the standalone funding for the Iron Dome was because Democrats couldn't put it in the continuing resolution to fund the budget because those 9 progressives said that they weren't going to vote for it. And all of us Republicans voted against the continuing resolution for the budget bill. So Pelosi had to take that funding out in order to pass the CR to keep the government functioning because the squad locked down on her if she didn't take that funding out, which is why they had a supplemental appropriations just for the Iron Dome funding, which is why you saw the numbers were so supportive for that funding. Look, Israel is our largest and strongest ally in the region. We should do nothing but help them in any way that we can. And if that means supporting them for their Iron Dome funding, we absolutely should be doing that, which is a defensive system to protect them against terrorist attacks.
How much is Iran and all the other countries, really? We talk about China and Russia. Everyone's watching how weak America is, abandoning our allies now. But seeing this growing BDS movement, they really do want to stand against Israel. There isn't that sense of support. They're just trying to play, I don't even know if it's both sides of the equation anymore. They are so pro-Palestinian.
Well, they've definitely moved way far to the left, and they have to because they have this progressive squad that's governing and dictating the direction of policy on the House floor. Because Speaker Pelosi can only lose 5 votes and the squad is 9 votes, anything that they want to take a position on and leverage their 9 votes to try to get what they need in these bills, they're going to do, which is why you haven't seen a vote on their 3.5 spending bill. You haven't seen a vote yet on infrastructure. You've seen all of this talked about for months and months and months. But if she puts something on the floor that the progressives like, the moderates aren't going to like it. If it's something the moderates like, the progressives aren't going to like it. So she has to play this game to appease the far left progressive woke part of their party, which is driving all of their policies far to the left.
We saw this happen all throughout the summer where actually protests in America were against Israel. So there is a grassroots, even if you call it that, the Antifa, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter even came out and said they stand with the Palestinians. This is something that the radical base wants. And if we've seen anything, even the so-called or at one time moderate Democrats do eventually give in, even if it's just because they're afraid of the radical factions of their party.
Well, look at all the comments that Representative Omar has made repeatedly that are clearly anti Semitic comments. I filed a resolution last Congress to condemn her anti Semitic remarks, and not a single Democrat would sign on to it. So that shows you right there that it's all lip service to those in the Jewish faith and those that are of Israeli descent, that they support them. But in the same token, they're driving this narrative with the progressives against Israel and pro-Palestinian, which is not the direction that our country should be going.
Real quick, I want to get your opinion on Thomas Massie. He tends to like to do things his own way. The only Republican that actually voted against this. He says he doesn't want to send any foreign aid. But there are certain allies that we should be standing with, especially when it's defending themselves from radical terrorist organizations.
Yeah, I stand with Israel. I haven't had a conversation with Representative Massie, so I don't know his exact reasoning, but he does seem to be a type of member that is against any type of foreign aid, and he's just drawing a black and white line. But you have to look at the region, the Middle Eastern region. We don't have many allies and friends there, and Israel is one of them. And we should stand with them and do whatever we can to protect them against terrorist attacks. The Iranians want to wipe them off the map. They've said that themselves. They chant death to America and death to Israel. If Israel needs assistance, especially in defending themselves against terrorist missiles, I think that's absolutely what we should do as a country.
Absolutely. We stand with Israel. Thank you for standing with Israel. It was so good to see that Congress actually stood with Israel, still in the majority, even though rhetoric-wise, you know that things are moving away from that. But we'll keep fighting for Israel. God bless you, and God bless America and Israel.